I'm Chris Yandak. Today on CYInterview this coming Saturday night, June 3rd. TLC Forever, a documentary about one of the best-selling female groups of all time, will air on Lifetime at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We welcome today the director of TLC Forever, Matt Kay. Thank you so much for joining us on CYInterview. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
We're looking forward to it. Also here today is CYInterview's sponsor, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies, LLC, and a big TLC fan as well, Mr. Rob Gill. Rob, thanks for always being here on CYInterview.
Chris, honored to thank you for inviting me and looking forward to today's conversation.
Oh, absolutely. So, Matt, just to begin, had a chance to watch the documentary film TLC Forever over the weekend. Loved it. Chili's been a past CYInterview guest. I guess the thing I want to most focus on with you and what I took away from it is, what did you realize about Chili and T-Boz's relationship today, obviously in the aftermath of Lisa Lopez so many years later, how they're dealing with it and how they've moved on to continue performing today?
What I think is so special is anyone that's had a 30-year friendship is obviously it's a special thing. But for them, all the ups and downs they had, the fame, the fortune, but then, as you mentioned, some really tragic lows in their career and their lives, and to have had those experiences that really kind of shaped their whole trajectory from career-wise, but also their personal lives, I think has kind of bonded them almost like family. And so what I found, having had the privilege of being able to spend so much time with them, is that, they are literally like sisters, and knowing each other so well for over half their lives. When they first met, they were 19 and 20. And now, I won't say how old, but being a little bit older than that now, they've had the chance to really just kind of grow up and grow together, both maturing, but then also obviously all they've gone on to achieve. And so I just think that's a real privilege that they've managed to share, and we've now, as viewers, have managed to also witness.
It's going to be a big TV event this coming Saturday night at 8 p.m. on Lifetime. Rob, No Scrubs, Waterfalls, some of the biggest songs of the 1990s. What do you love about TLC and their music?
Yeah, they came on the scene. I was in college, I remember, and What About Your Friends? That first album was incredible, and what they brought was, the rap style that they brought in was really cool, and their music. It's still, to this day, I still listen to some of those songs. Like I'll definitely jam out on it. And I think that, the second album, and then as you watch, and I have a book coming out, it's called Surviving Success, right? So as you watch what happened over the next 5 or 10 years, and it happens in all walks of life, like, there's a great group, and, then there's the personal issues in their lives and how are they getting along. And then you find out about the contract, and there's so many different things that comes out afterwards that, for me, it's like, whenever we want to talk about financial literacy, that's the financial education system in America is dead. There's much more information that you can find on YouTube University. And, for what we want to do is be able to kind of create that curriculum, not just on financial literacy, but also how to deal with wealth wounds, mental health issues, that even if somebody is successful like they were, they all came from environments growing up that I'm pretty sure money in their household ran out on the 20th of every month. And that carries a certain weight on your shoulders. Now, all of a sudden, you're a star. You got to take care of your family. You want to please everybody, and you're not taking care of yourself. And I think that, if we could talk about mental health that's tied to wealth wounds, that's tied to financial literacy, and how kids can learn to market and brand themselves, because social media, as dark as it is for certain things, it's really good if it's utilized the right way.
Matt, do you think that people were very surprised when they were up there giving that press conference at the Grammys and they told the world that they were broke? Do you think that people just don't resonate with that?
I think now, maybe, unfortunately, there's been a few cases at that case in similar kind of vein, where people have unfortunately had to declare bankruptcy or been broke, as they said. I feel what was both obviously very challenging and tricky, but then also quite empowering was the fact of how they said it. Was they kind of just put it out there, no airs and graces, and just told it as it was. And I think that's what people love about TLC, is that they're always able to kind of say something and kind of straight down the barrel and say it as it is. But I think people inevitably would have been shocked and surprised. They're the biggest selling American female group of all time. And to be at that sort of level, literally having won 2 Grammys that very night and being having to borrow money. They all had to borrow money from Andre Rison, who was Lisa Left Eye Lopez's boyfriend at the time.
Yep.
They borrowed money from him to actually declare bankruptcy. So they didn't even have enough money to go through with the procedure. And so I think, yeah, it's very surprising. And unfortunately, as Rob was alluding to, these things, these financial wounds occur in many ways. But I think when you've had such success and you're at the precipice of achieving things that no people have ever achieved before, it's ever more apparent. And hopefully we show that in the documentary, how now, thankfully, having progressed and evolved from that time, they can really reflect on it and show, give new insight into what was causing that, but then also how they feel about that and how it's affected them today.
Rob, anything you want to ask Matt?
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful. I think that to be able to do what they did that night and say what they said to the directness that they said it, the ripple effect, I 20, 30 years or whatever the time frame is since they said it, you would hope that there's massive change. I can't help but to think of New Edition in 1983 after their marquee album. The 5 kids went back to the projects with a check that had 63 cents in it. I mean, think about that. And then 10 years later, approximately, is TLC, right? So it's pretty incredible that there's the scoundrels that are out there. It's a real thing, whether it's boxing managers, whether it's people in the financial services industry, whether it's people in AAU basketball, which is something that I'm involved in right now. It is real. It is pirates are all over the place, and I think that systems and processes need to be put in place to help all people that are in all kinds of entrepreneurial businesses so they can protect themselves.
Matt, thoughts?
I totally agree. I feel even now, obviously, things evolve from hard copies to now we're in a digital world. And so with streams, it's even less tangible to know how you make money from things as an artist. And I feel that's part of the trouble. And people can have even billions of streams and still earn very little. And so I think what's interesting, even though the actual percentages, as you're saying, Rob, the pirates out there who get the vast share of the percentages,
yeah,
I think that is still obviously the case, and it's even more accentuated now in the world we're in with streams. And at least if you got 10 cents for every album, you'd have to still sell a lot of albums, but people did, and you'd know if you became platinum that you would make good money. Whereas now people are having the equivalent of that with streams, and unfortunately, there's even less money than there was before. And there's obviously been a few artists which have been supporters of that, and they're still kind of trying to fly that flag. But it shows that what I think now in this day and age is the importance of kind of, which you can learn from places like YouTube, as you were saying, Rob, but the importance of just kind of going out and doing things in a little more of an independent and potentially more unorthodox way, as opposed to relying on these conglomerates such as the labels to then drip feed the money through.
And sometimes, to your point, unorthodox would be really collapsing time, turning decades into days, and becoming very intentional and controlling your own narrative if you have that access to social media. I do have a question, Matt, and I don't know if you know this or not. I haven't followed it. Do they own their own masters?
They do. So they actually bought back all their own masters, and so now they own everything. But obviously, before they owned zero. They actually re-recorded the tracks, so that now the only ones that are in existence are their ones, and they own everything.
That's
which
awesome.
is a beautiful full circle, going from literally going bankrupt because of their albums that had sold in the tens and hundreds of millions to now owning everything.
Yeah, and when these contracts got done initially, is there no lawyer present on their side? Is that kind of how this goes down when they're so young and they're about to take off?
I think lots of artists, the first deal you get and the first contract isn't a very good contract. And so that's quite standard across the board. And that's what they got for their first album. But typically, you would then sign a new contract and renegotiate when you do your second album.
Got it.
The second album, which Crazy Sexy Cool is the one that then got over 10 million sales in the States. That one was still under the same kind of percentages as the first album. Normally, you'd renegotiate that. What's slightly tricky with TLC is that their manager at the time was husbands with L.A. Reid, who they were signed to. So their manager and her husband, they were their vested interests were together with LaFace Records, as opposed to being invested in TLC as much as an artist. And so I think maybe that may have complicated things slightly. But I think ultimately you need kind of a manager that supports and is fighting your corner and would advise you to renegotiate those contracts, which apparently wasn't done. And so when they had all these millions of records sold, they were still getting the same percentages from their new artist contract, which isn't how is advisable to do.
Yeah.
So Matt, we've talked about today Chili and T-Boss's relationship today. We've talked about the financial situations and the challenges that TLC went through. What else do you want people to take away from TLC Forever that's on Lifetime this Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time?
Thanks for the plug. I love it, Chris. I think that what people could take away from the film is really just these two amazing individuals that have gone through all these highs and lows, but they have stood to tell the tale. And now they've got this amazing wisdom and insight of what they've achieved, but they're still going through lots of things, as you'll find out. And so I think what's great is to be able to follow the story and to follow them in the present day and being able to see them as they're reflecting, but also kind of living these things out and trying to still do everything they did, and they have big plans in the future, from concerts to tours. And I think the ultimate thing to take away is that they're not done, they're not finished, and they're still going strong. And it's interesting to see that evolution as they progress in their artist's journey.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would want to know is that when you were with them, was there ever a moment for both of them wondering how life would have been different had Lisa not died?
It's a great question.
Definitely. I think there'd be so many things different, and maybe they're slightly too close to knowing Lisa and having her out also as a sister. And so with the death, that obviously impacted a huge amount of things, like TLC, obviously her name is in their name. And so they're inextricably linked as a group. But I think the reaction that they had is more just kind of losing a loved one. But had she been alive, I think the albums would the three of them together. What makes TLC so special is they all bring their own individual uniqueness, from the creativity, the style, their messaging, and even the sound. And so I think as a trio that gelled so beautifully together, it'd have been amazing to see as they carried on evolving what that would have looked like albums in the future as a three. But I think they've got really fond memories of Lisa, and they also had times like I guess sisters do, where you hate each other and then you love each other, and it's kind of back and forth. And so it wasn't all kind of peaches and creams or roses, so to speak. So there were definitely tricky times. So I think they also are aware that was the case. But ultimately, they always kind of came back around, and they all loved each other, and they all knew that TLC was such a special thing, and they couldn't even explain what that energy, that magic was that they created together. But it's unfortunately something that we'll never actually be able to find out in terms of what would have happened. But she was such a special presence, and it was a privilege being able to relive those moments with them as they were kind of watching things that they did as a three, now as a two, and seeing unseen footage of Lisa, which there's plenty of in the documentary.
Rob, final questions from Matt?
I do have a last question. Where were they in their relationship at the time of when Lisa shuffled off this mortal coil? Were they kind of communicating, getting back to communicating, or was there just like a radio silence going on at that time? Yes,
they just before the death there was a disagreement, and so they weren't speaking.
Okay.
Tion had was in hospital. She nearly actually died from a brain tumor. Some of this is detailed in a much more eloquent way by Tion herself in the film. But she was in hospital, and Lisa actually went to visit her in hospital, and they had a really special afternoon together. Lisa brought her flowers. They had a great conversation, and she was there all afternoon before she flew off to Honduras, which is where the fatal car crash happened.
Yeah.
So it ended on really good terms, which is great, and it was lovely that they had that kind of last meeting. But yeah, it was up and down, but it kind of rectified itself just before that trip when Lisa went away.
Amazing.
Final thing for you, Matt. IMDb is a wonderful thing, as you know. Are you working on a project with one of the biggest sports stars in the world, Lewis Hamilton? Is that true?
That is true. So yeah, Lewis Hamilton. Been filming with him for a couple of years now. That's been dependent on his season and what's going on, and so now we're in a downtime. There's no filming going on, but yes, he's another amazing person. I've had the privilege of bearing witness to his life and his achievements and many accomplishments, and they're very different worlds, but equally as exciting and fun, with a little bit less dancing.
Well, we're looking forward to having Lewis here in November when Formula One comes to Las Vegas. So Lewis Hamilton, one of the biggest sports stars in the world. Love to have you back to talk about that when that project comes out. You know, he's just everywhere right now, as you know.
He is, and it looks like Las Vegas is gearing up for a crazy few days. It should be a great race. They always are really exciting. Any
Las Vegas stories or memories? Have you been here before I wrap up?
I've never been. I've heard lots about it, and yeah, this will be.
You got to come at some point for sure.
Yeah, I'll be. I can't wait. Looking forward to it. How about you?
So in the meantime, this coming Saturday night, TLC Forever will debut on Lifetime at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. A documentary film about the best-selling female group in the United States in history. So for director, filmmaker Matt Kay, obviously of TLC Forever, and founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC and a CYInterview sponsor, Rob Gill, I'm Christian Nick. Thank you both for being on CYInterview today.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you for watching today's CYInterview segment from Las Vegas. Please hit the like button and please hit the subscribe button to be updated on all future CYInterview content from Las Vegas and beyond.